Hey everyone, welcome to How You Go There. I'm Scott Montgomery, and I'm thrilled to kick off this series where we walk through the How You Go There workbook together.
And I'm your co host, Linda Misegatis. We're diving into the real stories and steps behind personal and professional growth.
Before you can chart out a new path, you have to understand the path that brought you here. And this series is all about slowing down, reflecting, and getting curious about your experiences. That's how you go there. I'm Scott Montgomery, and today we're diving into a chapter of the workbook that quietly shapes almost everything in our lives: relationships. How we doing, Linda?
Good, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and I can't wait to talk about this today because honestly, relationships for me is why I do what I've done, why I'm going to do what I've done, what I'm going to do in the future, and how I got here, quite
Well, and what
frankly.
I love about this one as well. So today we're going to, so just so all of our listeners know, we're breaking this one up into 2 episodes because, to your point, relationships are so important in this overall
hmm
journey and conversations that we're having related to not just the book and the workbook, but just life in general and how critical this is. And so today we're going to
Yeah,
focus on mapping the network that shapes your journey. But before we jump into that, I want you to share with all of our listeners this
thank
really
you.
amazing feedback that you got from your alma mater now that you're a college graduate and all that stuff. So,
That's right. I mean, it only took 54 years for me to figure
hey,
that out.
hey, you finished it. That's all that counts. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. My kids say I have less flex now that I have a degree for all that I've accomplished, but whatever. I think it's important. It's
I
been
think
easier
so.
with the degree, and maybe
Yeah,
life would have been so kill or be killed if I'd felt more confident.
absolutely.
To that end, you're right, and I appreciate you asking for me to share a little bit about this. It was a great experience. I am a graduate of the University of Virginia's School of Professional and Continuing Studies, UVA. Highly ranked public school in the country, and they've asked me on several occasions to speak to some of their classes. Um, they give credibility to the fact that I wrote a book, that I'm later in life, and that I have a successful business. And how do we help younger or new students aspiring for those things to be a truth for themselves? Can you bring any words of wisdom? So, to that end, I'm
People love
always
those stories, old people who actually accomplish things in life. It makes me laugh a
oh,
little bit, but a good thing, right? Like it is just kind of funny, like that is a great basis of a story because it shows that perseverance, and it all pays off in the long run, which is really indicative of your story. So,
well, I think actually, to your point, it's not perseverance as much as it was relationships. And what was
good
interesting,
point.
I was included in it was last week's class, and I spoke for about 2 hours. We had a Q and A. I told the story, I reviewed my book, I reviewed why I wrote my book, and I also shared with them that if they called me, they could have a copy of the workbook for no charge. So, the teacher, professor, if you will, at the end did an AI summary of my reporting, what I had talked about, which ended up being about 7 or 8 pages of what we talked about broken out.
Mhm.
But more importantly, he gave me the student feedback assignment that was asked of each student, what was your takeaway? How did this land for you? And what was the important theme
Mhm.
that you took away from this experience? And every single one of them said relationships is a key factor to success and leadership.
Yeah.
And they heard my perspective. And I'll show you a quick graph for our viewers that are watching. This is a summary of words that were used in our presentation. And we talked about the kite and the string as it relates to my chapter in partnerships. We talked about that last week. But
Yeah.
the word there that came out most relevant is relationships.
I love that word map, Scott. What a great visual. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was really exciting, and I just wanted to share how excited I was, how proud I am of this ability, and who would have ever thought that someone would be able to support and inspire the next generation in such an important topic. Because
Mhm.
I've always my employees and mentors, coachees, it's never what we know, it's always who we know. And so I love to
Yeah.
contradict that from when we were younger. Oh, you need to know everything. It's what you know,
Mhm.
have skills and talents and all these other things. Well, my talent is relationships,
Right,
and it's
right.
a lot of success in a lot of different areas. So I'd like to promote talent. I'm glad we're going to be talking about it today. Sure, you've got some stories you want to share, but I just thought I'd open up with my my proud UVA moment of the week.
Heck yeah, and
So thank you for
absolutely you
that.
should. No, definitely. Well, and what I love about this as well is, like for me personally, I thought when you first started saying that it's not what you know, it's who you know. I'm like, whatever. This is just some marketing guy, right, telling me this stuff
Yeah,
about it because
sure.
I'm like, no, it isn't. But then as I started really looking at it, if you look back at any meaningful milestone in your life, there was probably a person attached to it, right? And I did that
Uh,
myself, which is one of the exercises we're going to go through today is kind of that relationship mapping. When I look back at the trajectory of my career and how I've gotten to where I am today, while yes, what I know is great because that's how I was successful in those roles, but how I got those roles was because of
right.
the relationships that I had.
And that's what I did. I role reversed it. So I was fortunate to get entry level jobs that then I educated myself, learned what I needed to know in order to present it and honor who I knew that afforded me that opportunity.
Yeah. Yep.
So
No,
I
I think it's
it
so true, right?
it's how I got my degree later in life just to show my kids, "Look, this matters." But also, when I was going through my life and building my business and my clients or my friends or my relationships
Mhm.
did something of me, I studied it and I implemented it. So it's not
Right.
like I grew uneducated on what
No.
I know.
Right.
I did what I did for who I knew.
Yes, yes, yeah. So now I am a big believer. I have flipped my way of thinking as well, and I do
Great.
strongly believe that it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I've watched that throughout my career. If I go back and really even reflect on things that you see, people that you're scratching your head, even sometimes you're like, how the heck did they get that job? It's because of who they
Right.
knew. Not that they weren't smart, intelligent,
Sure.
talented people or anything like that, but that's how they got the in, right? Sometimes it's all about that piece. And I remember when we had back when we were doing our other podcast, when we first kind of launched this, we had Sammy
Yeah.
Guerin on, and she
Yeah.
talked about,
And
and
it was
I was
great.
like, that was such a great story of relationships and how she used those relationships to get where she is today. Which at a young age, she's accomplished quite a bit. So
Totally. And honoring those relationships has always been really important to me, which is how I sustain the relationships too. So you have
yeah.
to bring yourself, your growth has to map to the demands of the opportunity. And you have to be willing to fine tune your skills to do the opportunity in honor of the person who gave you the opportunity.
Hmm.
Oh, feels better than sitting in a classroom trying to figure out where you're going to apply that lesson.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's
So
how I
let's
did it. It's a lot of work, but it's how I did it. It feels much more satiating.
I agree. Yeah, no, I think that's a really great way to frame it. So let's take a small step back because if anybody didn't listen to our episode on partnerships, shame on you and go listen to it.
Yeah, yeah,
But if
it's
this is
out
the
there.
first one, yeah, it's out there. But if this is the first one that you're tuning into, can you do a favor and actually explain how you define relationships versus partnerships? Because they're not how everybody defines them, and I just wanna that'll be helpful in setting the stage for our episode today.
Yeah, I always looked at partnerships as more holistic to life, and at least that's how I've defined them in trying to capture them in a literary sense.
Mhm.
I I looked at partnerships as my person is my partner, and my family can be in partnership with me, but relationships were things I fostered in business
Mhm.
and in value add. So, if I needed
Yeah.
a friend who's a personal trainer, if I needed a friend to help me grow my business, if I needed a friend to come work for me inexpensively, I would look at relationships. If I was trying to be centered and mapped to my talents, which are visionary centric, marketing centric, I would probably want my partnerships to be more disciplined and tactical to make the whole work well when I was looking at other relationships. And I know this sounds a little diluted, but I never looked at relationships as there could be plenty of them in their value add to a certain quadrant of your life. Partnerships to me were more my partner in life. And
Yeah.
so either way, whatever title you put on those, both matter. So if someone wants
Mhm.
to say marriage is their relationship, then use the word partnership in today's topic.
Well, what I kind of hear you saying is that, when we think about relationships, it's that dynamic connection. It's built on trust, communication, and mutual respect, which of course you're going to
Mhm,
have with your
mhm.
partner as well. But those are important
Cour
components of a relationship, right? Because you
Yeah,
still have a relationship with your partner, even though, but in this particular case, and then the influences direction, because it can be both positive and negative. I have some negative relationships in my life that actually fuel me in a different way than some of those positive relationships in my life, right? So I
right.
think that's an important component as well, that the influence direction can go both positive or negative.
Yeah, and I think relationships, I personally, again, how I capture them and the way I define them are, people who jump on your train, who you're
Mhm.
along the ride with, who may jump off the train.
That's
And
right.
I a few that I even define in the book have already jumped off the train, and that was a well-served relationship.
Yeah.
They The line between familial and that relationship can get a little blurry, but I
Mhm.
try those because if my partner jumped off the train, I might be a little bit more of a problem. If my
Yes.
relationship jumped off the train of life, then it's kinda maybe their time and a new person can jump on, you
Right,
know?
yeah. No, I think that's a good way of framing that, for sure. Well, so talk to a little bit about why do you think people underestimate relationships and success? Because that kinda goes back to that old adage of, it's not who you know, it's what you know,
Right.
which was where the underestimation of relationships really came into play. But why do you think people underestimate that?
I think it's a societal thing, and
Mm,
I think universities and places you're learning to do business and certifications are often talking about a skill they want you to learn,
mhm.
so why would they put emphasis on a feeling of a relationship that can then foster a different belief, right? So, if business is run on tactical behaviors, relationships can often be not tactical, and they can be, um, like how you are interacting with someone versus a skill you've learned at a college or you've learned in a certification program or you've learned in business.
Yeah.
So for me, I just feel like it's probably more societal is why,
Mhm.
and I think challenging the norm allows for us this opportunity to talk about the importance. I mean, you and I have we're in a relationship. We're in a
Yeah,
very solid. We've been in one for 10 years.
for
And
sure.
that's not to say that I'm gonna require you to be at my funeral because you may jump off the train or I may jump off the train, but we've had a value add time together in relationship, and we've learned a ton.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That capitalism, that university, that teaching something to know something
Mhm.
puts emphasis there, and while they often say relationships will matter, I put emphasis on relationships. I've always done that. I did it when we first met.
Yeah,
When you
I agree.
and you left and I said, "Hey, when it's time, you'll jump on my train or I'll jump
Mhm.
on yours." And I got the call 4 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. And when I left that meeting, it was grounded in the relationship side of it, right? It's where the
Yeah,
connection was made because it wasn't a matter of whether or not I thought you could or couldn't do what we were looking for at the time. It's whether or not I thought I
right.
could or could not work with you, right? Like it was the relationship,
Right. There
right?
you
Because
go.
it's so important because we were going to, like, it was
Beautiful.
the relationship side of that that was way more important to me because I already knew you had the skills. That wasn't the
Yeah.
issue. And
Well,
the
that's what people
talent and
don't
all of
dare
the things that come with it.
underestimate, Linda,
It
to your
was
point.
the relationship.
Yeah. To continue on the idea of why I put emphasis on relationships is it's often hard to learn a skill
Mm.
that is to shift and change, and you're mapped into an environment where if you can't perform a skill, you don't provide value. And if you can't
Yes.
skill and it changes, you get thrown to the curb. But if you are in relationship, you can evolve with the next skill that replaces the old skill. And you can
Yeah.
get back involved because you have that transparency, that trust, that communication you were talking about in the beginning
Mhm.
with someone that says, well, just go give me a minute and I'll catch up and we'll update my skill set or my. So again, back to last episode, skills and talent, right?
Mhm.
Talent is understanding relationships and their importance. My skills can be sharpened as it goes. And I
Mhm.
think you're right. Culturally we spend a lot of time putting more value on skills. And
We
I don't
do.
know that that's a good. I don't know that I believe that's how my successes occurred.
Mhm.
And I also think that my successes are so out of the ordinary that I can't help promote that if people can put relationships as a talent,
Mhm.
fine tune their skills, the world's their oyster. With over a decade of experience, WorldGate LLC is your trusted partner in IT staffing and project management tailored for the public sector. We help government agencies and organizations navigate complex technology landscapes, implement effective workforce solutions, and build high-performing teams from strategic staffing to seamless systems integrations. We bring the experience and reliability to execute, empower, and exceed for our customers. Staffing? Check. Project management? Check. Public sector solutions? Check. Experience you can trust. Visit our website at www.worldgatellc.com today.
Well, because we know that relationships actually create access, they
Mhm,
create perspective, right? The
mhm, mhm.
accountability side of it,
Yes.
emotional stability, and
Yes.
opportunity. All of those
Yeah.
things are what relationships actually bring to your life, to your job, to the things that you're doing, right?
And I find those who wanna be in a relationship with me, if they're also sharpening their skills, it's a double win.
Oh, 100% agree with that. Yeah.
So, relationship mapping inside of our companion guide here, which is really to move into a tactical for our viewers, listeners, and podcast participants here, is really about helping people synthesize the difference between mentoring, relationships, and partnerships. So, in my first exercise of how you go there, digging deeper, I ask you the same 5 questions I ask in the book about reflecting on key relationships in your life. How have these relationships shaped your personal journey? How do these relationships align with your values, goals, vision, and future? These are all very legitimate questions that can help you focus on what a relationship might look to you to benefit you. So,
Yeah.
how you want to assess those things can then, as we turn the page and look at relationship mapping, think about 3 mentors who have had a positive impact on your personal or professional journey, and use the space to reflect on what worked and didn't work during your journey with them while you were on the train with them.
Yeah.
So, when I felt like I had a serendipitous moment, when I felt like they had the ability to see me and not just
Mhm.
Scott or a skills-based Scott, but an emphasis on my talents.
Yeah.
Those mattered to me, so I put the pluses and I put the minuses. I've also had people on there that said, "I don't give a shit what you have to say. I asked you to be
Right.
here at 9 o'clock. Answer the phone and you're done." So read the story, sure, but then fill this out and ask yourself where your headed is a value add in this phase of life that I'm excited to promote with no agenda. I just want to
Right.
make it someone and move that needle forward for someone. It's
Absolutely.
self-prophecy, self-fulfillment.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and just kind of like if I could give everybody a high level overview of how to go about doing this is when you go through and you're doing this first one, do it as a brain dump. So grab a piece of paper, you can do it
Mhm.
directly in the workbook or grab a piece of
Yeah.
paper, but do it as a
Yeah.
brain dump. Don't overthink it and write down the names of professional, personal, inner circle and peripheral influences, right? Yes,
Yeah.
there are note pages in the book, so you can
So you
grab those
don't
as
have to get
well.
a book. Right.
Absolutely,
Right.
so you've got the notebook right there, no, which is
Yeah.
perfect, and I think,
Yeah.
if you don't overthink it, just jot those
Mm-mm.
down for where you are, and then from there, you wanna kinda categorize it a little bit more, right? So, now you wanna think about who are my supporters, who are my mentors, and that's why if you first start out by just writing them down, like, write them down on the note on the page, right? So, just kind of put them there, then go to the workbook and do the categorization where you think about
Yeah.
who are my supporters, my
It's
mentors, my
great.
collaborators, my
Mhm.
challengers, my energy
Mhm.
drainers, because there are a lot of those out there too that, this is also
Yes.
a good opportunity to maybe do some purging as well. So I
Totally.
think that,
Kick 'em off your
that
train. Get off
take
my
it off your train.
train.
Yeah. And I think that by doing that, it will then help you with the second part of that exercise that Scott brought up, which is the future mentor. So thinking about where do I want to go? Because the goal of this is to think about where am I at today and
Yeah.
who has
Yeah.
influenced me, right? But where do I want to go? How do I go there? That's the whole point of our
Yeah.
conversations and
How
what
do you
we're trying to
yeah,
do, right?
how you go there. That's exactly right, Linda, and there's further and I know you wanna go over them, and we will next episode on relationships, but there's also ways to guide after you've landed on what that might look like for you, the next few
Yeah.
exercises in this chapter talk about the action plan. We talk about how you're doing, and it asks questions that sort of align with how do you want to reflect on your relationships.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the piece that I think is nice of you to bring up while we go through the tactical pieces of all of
Mhm.
this is that it is a collection of data that will eventually tell you the story. So we've
Yeah.
broken it out exercises that help you funnel and
Yeah.
sift.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, and I think, for all of our listeners out there, after you go through this exercise, just some realizations that you might think about are, do I have too many supporters and not enough challengers? Because you can have a lot of
Right.
cheerleaders in your corner, but they're not challenging you. So you're not getting any better. Maybe not getting any worse, but you're not growing because everybody's just like, yeah, Scott, yeah, Linda, you're the greatest. Jim, no, everything you do is perfect. And that doesn't actually help. You need a balance of both the supporters and the
Totally.
challengers, right?
Yeah. You've
Yeah.
challenged me all too often in this life, Linda. I'm a little over it. But other than that, yeah. But yeah, you've been both a challenger and a promoter and a collaborator.
Yes, that's right.
It's been a myriad of good experiences, and so yeah, you have to ask yourself who encourages me, who challenges me to think, what influences my decision, and answer these questions is a great way to get them out of here in a swirl and into a tactical, approachable
Yeah,
execution model for
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
and you might find that you have a lot of one-sided relationships that,
you
as you
might,
go through this, you might find out that you don't have any mentors. I know that was something I realized as well. I'm like, gosh, I don't actually have any mentors. Like when I first started on this journey with you, I'm like, who are my mentors? Do I actually have any? And so,
right?
that was kind of interesting to go through as well. No
Yeah.
peers at at the same growth level. So
Yeah,
I don't
you
have
especially have
anybody.
the SME sort of position
Yeah.
where you're the solopreneur within a big organization. That's
Mhm.
gotta be hard. And
Yeah.
so at how you mitigate the pressures of that can absolutely be done through how you go there, for
Yep.
example, by
Yep.
figuring how you wanna be in relationship with other departments or people in the organization.
That is right. That is exactly it, which is good. So which, I will give you
Yeah.
credit for being one of my mentors. So,
No, no,
but,
no. Relationship.
a relationship, that's right. And then, the other thing you might find through all of this is, are you avoiding necessary conversations? This is something you and I have talked
Mm,
about throughout the years with different
yes.
people that are at different stages of the relationship, right? That sometimes maybe we're holding on too tight and it's time to maybe let it go. But those are hard conversations to have sometimes. So, yeah.
Because I think the other thing in relationship, and I know we're probably killing this to no end, but another thing important for people to consider in their assessment that may not be in the workbook or anything else that we
Mhm.
do is don't start with ill intended. It's
Yeah.
I've heard that from some very good friends over the years that if you just start with they're not being ill intended, it also makes it easy to digest change or the
Yeah.
shift. And so that's how I think you and I've gotten through some tough conversations because it's like you need the space to say it as it is for
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
But if you can also have the space to take that in and go, all right, well, that wasn't ill intended, but may not be exactly how it lands. Let's talk about
Mhm.
it. It'd be
Yeah.
real easy. And these are
I
relationship
agree.
tactics. We're going to get into them, I suppose, in the
Yeah,
next one. But
we will.
I think I hope it's helpful in line with our viewers experiencing today's podcast.
So I think where I'd like to shift to is as we're closing this out is there are 3 takeaways I'd like all of our listeners to take away
That's
from
great.
this episode today, right? So takeaway 1, map your relationships, name
Mhm.
them. Super important for you to go through that process, whether you
Yes.
use the workbook or you don't, go through this exercise. It's a good one
Use the
to do,
workbook.
but use the
Use the
workbook.
workbook.
That's right. It's so
Yes.
much easier if you use the
Yes.
workbook. So, um,
Yes.
takeaway number 2 is identify what each relationship provides. Yeah, that's another
Mhm.
really important thing that you're thinking about there. And then the last one is decide what needs to shift. So, do I need to strengthen some relationships as I
Mhm.
look at this? Do I maybe need to repair some relationships? Maybe there's some out there where I'm like, I've not nurtured this relationship and it's an important one to me. Or maybe I damaged the relationship somewhere along the line and I need to repair that relationship. Maybe I
Right.
need to create some new relationships. There might be a gap in there. And Scott, I think that was something you were pointing out is that that's the purpose of this particular chapter is to really look at that. And what we're trying to get people to recognize is the importance of creating relationships, right?
Assessing them and then making sure you understand what the gaps are, totally. And also,
Yeah,
when people jump off your train, that's another version of assessment. Maybe it was time for them to jump off your train and a new
absolutely.
relationship needs to emerge.
Yeah,
So, being aware of the okayness of all that is also why this is a nice way to slow it down, process it, fill out the workbook, and sort of embrace it rather than
yeah,
be nervous about it. Those are
absolutely.
great takeaways. Great takeaways.
Yeah, and the last 2 really and you mentioned one is release, and the last
Hmm.
one is protect. So,
Yeah.
those are the things that you can look at as you go through all of that. And so one just the question I would put out to our listeners to think on is if someone mapped you, what category do you think you would land in? Where do
Yeah.
you sit in those relationships? So it's just something for you to reflect on yourself out there. So, but Scott, this has been such a great, really, such a great, it has been a great relationship. This
Yes,
has
it
been
has been a
such
great
a,
relationship.
and so for all of our listeners out there, how do they get in touch with you, Scott?
So, www.howyougothere.com is a website that gives you access to the podcast, the book, the companion guide. I even think my first authorship is in there. And you can buy some mugs and tchotchkes and some promotional things like a journal if you want to
Yeah,
do some journaling. And yeah, again, it's www.howyougothere.com. Please like and follow our podcast. That's always a good way to get more information out to others in the community. And
absolutely.
I'll look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Yeah, and we'd be remiss if we left out LinkedIn, Instagram. You can
Uh-huh.
anywhere you can follow us out there. So we definitely would love to see you out there and provide us feedback. Scott and I love to get
Please.
your feedback. So definitely, it's always helpful for us to hear what you have to say, and we learn along the way as well. So to everyone out there, the right relationships don't happen by accident; they are built with intention. So make
Beautiful.
sure you're doing that.
That's right. Have a
Thanks,
great day.
everyone.